So we covered a lot on this episode of Dollars and Cents. Fortunate enough to have Zach Keister join me, Joel Garris, on the program. Zach, we started off with a conversation about tariffs, right? We then got into having the right expectations as it results to the great wealth transfer and what folks need to know about that.
Yeah, and as well as some questions that both sides need to be asking. Before the break, we were on the side of what Gen Z needs to be asking. Again, that was, what do I want this money to do? How do I honor my family's legacy while building my own? What causes or charities matter to me? And how do I balance spending, saving, or giving? Now, there's also a flip side of this, and what baby boomers need to be asking the Gen Z recipients.
There's a few questions that they might want to ask as well. What's on that list, Zach?
So first up is, do you know what you would do if you got this inheritance tomorrow? And how would you handle that? So that really can lay some groundwork of what's going to happen once this passes on to them, especially if that's kind of a bit of a spur of the moment question. You're going to get probably a pretty honest answer.
Yeah, maybe even over the holiday dinner after a glass of wine, you may get an even more honest answer depending upon your family dynamics. But it's funny. Speaking about the family dynamics, and I think this is a good segue to kind of our last topic that we teed up at the beginning of the program, and that is this notion. And we're seeing this more and more where couples are experiencing staggered retirement, meaning that they are not really necessarily retiring at the same time. One may still be working, the other may be retiring, and there's a host of reasons for that. Not always about the money, or it may just be more about personal readiness, career satisfaction, or kind of even on the health side of things.
Yeah, even on the health side of things. There's a very interesting statistic that we found on this. Most people imagine that both partners leave work at the same time, but in reality, only 11% of Americans actually retire together. In fact, 62% retire more than 1 year apart.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that. I mean, that's only 1 in 10 that are retiring together. 2/3, it's an extended difference, if you will, in terms of the timing. And then that obviously, as we were just talking about, important to have good communication. And also ultimately to sort of understand the emotional side that comes with that, right? Because maybe there can be some jealousy or resentment or any of those kinds of things that come with that staggered retirement situation.
And we definitely have heard those conversations before.
Correct.
I have to keep going to work while the other gets to play and have fun, or vice versa. Yeah.
No, and oftentimes, there can be some real reasons why. I mean, obviously, maintaining at least one piece of income. Healthcare, often a big reason, and healthcare coverage, often a big reason why there's a difference. We just had someone in the office this past week. There's age difference. 5 years age difference. So obviously, the older one is eligible for things like Medicare and things like that at an earlier stage than the younger one of the couple, and that's an important consideration.
It's a huge consideration. We have that conversation very frequently of what's going to happen with the health insurance. I mean, that's a large piece of the discussion. So that often ends up being why one of them continues to work for at least a couple more years.
Right, and then overlay that, things like the timing of when you decide to take Social Security, all of those kinds of things. And maybe there's a strategy where, one has sort of had enough. I'm thinking of a couple that we visited with recently that she was a school teacher, and generally, after doing that for a while, you kind of have enough, or at least that's kind of what we hear in the office. And but he really enjoyed his job, and it was outside, and he enjoyed it, and so no intention of wanting to retire, but the reality is that it does require some planning, even in those kinds of situations where you've still got that one income still coming in. But in this case, it was, okay, what can we do to comfortably make up for her loss of income without having to rely too heavily on the asset? So those are the kinds of things that, as with anything, you've got to really kind of work it through and think through those possibilities.
Once again, another conversation is needed.
Right. Certainly the importance of having a conversation and engaging in that certainly applies when you've got a couple that's looking to retire at different ages. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we've seen this, and we've had many of these conversations where one of them is ready to retire and travel and do another different type of adventure, and the other one's like, well, I'm going to keep on working. So then it's kind of like, well, where do you go from here? You obviously got to go one way or the other. So very important to have that conversation to make sure that you're both on the same page going forward.
Well, and then you overlay kind of the emotional aspects of that we talked about earlier. That it's important to have that full conversation. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So here's a couple of actionable steps that you can take with your partner. Discuss retirement planning timely. Plan for income needs. Decide when to take Social Security. Consider emotional impacts, and consult a financial planner to model different scenarios, because there's all kinds of different scenarios, right? One's going to keep working, one's going to retire, you're both going to retire at the same time. This idea of staggered retirement, say maybe it's 1 year, 3 years, there's a whole host of ideas and things that need to be figured out when you go down that road.
No, and certainly some good highlights to really kind of talk through as a couple in terms of what it's going to look like, and also the impact that it's going to have on your budget. I mean, again, it is, those statistics do not lie. When we talk about only 11% of couples will retire at the same time, 2/3 will retire, at least a year apart. We just see that all the time. Maybe one's ready or not ready. Maybe one wants to spend a little bit more time with the grandkids, or it's just the fear of losing that schedule, which we forget when we work. There's a lot of value and emotional and physical and mental benefits that come from it.
Yeah, and we've seen those statistics over and over again about tying to continue to work and having an individual purpose with life and work connected. So yeah, very, very important.
So important, and to really make sure that you're planning and is addressing this particular issue, because as you mentioned, Zach, you've got healthcare coverage that comes into play. You've got income that comes into play. I mean, so many different things where you've got to really kind of plan it through. It really gets back to what we always talk about on the program and when people visit us in the office, is that financial planning isn't kind of some one size fits all kind of thing.
Not at all, and it's not something that you just set and forget either. It's an ongoing, continual process to continue to having conversations and figuring out the path ahead. I mean, I've heard a quote before that retirement is not a destination, it's a journey, because it continues. It doesn't just, you're not going to one place and that's it. I mean, this is the rest of your life you've got to consider and continue to plan for here.
Well, and that's kind of what makes our days interesting at the office, is obviously we engage in these conversations on a daily basis, many times throughout the course of the day, the entire team, just kind of working through these types of discussions. And Zach, it's not just a one conversation and done. I mean, there's usually a series of 2 or 3 conversations that are crucial to kind of really lay out the game plan, not just in terms of what it looks like and the emotional side, but you've really got to start kind of digging into the financial side as well in order to kind of have things be as tax efficient as possible when you're looking at generating that income.
Right, and there's all these different scenarios with I'm going to retire today or I'm going to retire 3 years from now and everything in between. And numbers change, goals change, ideas, physical locations change. You might move. It just never ends.
So to learn more about how we might be able to help you, if any of these types of scenarios apply, where you're looking at a staggered retirement, or you're concerned about tariffs, or maybe you've got to have a conversation with the next generation about that potential wealth transfer, check out our website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com. There you can not only learn about more about us, but you can also schedule an absolutely free conversation. So we encourage you to do that. With that, we're going to wrap it on up and get on out of here. This has been Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris, Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning. Thanks for listening to the program.